This K9 German Shepherd was left to die until she decided to attack someone. She was abandoned in a freezing alley, ribs showing, eyes hollow, barely clinging to life. Nobody looked twice, until one night she stood up and attacked. But what shocked everyone wasn't who she attacked. It was why she did it. What happened next left an entire town speechless and changed a man's life forever. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring stories like this straight to you. Winter had clawed his way into the small town of Fairgrove, biting through the narrow streets like a silent thief. Snow piled up along the curbs, and people hurried from place to place with heads down, scarves tight, never stopping long enough to notice what lay in the shadows. Behind a shuttered warehouse on Lincoln Avenue, near a row of overflowing dumpsters, something moved. Her name had once been Nyla. She had once worn a K9 badge, had once slept inside police cruisers, had once stood proud beside her handler during raids, searches, and rescues. She had been sharp, disciplined, unstoppable. But now, she was just another broken creature left to die. Her coat, once sleek and groomed, was patchy and dirty. Her ribs pressed visibly through her skin. The cold seeped into her joints. The scar on her left flank, still healing from an old knife wound, ached every time she shifted her weight. She didn't know where her partner had gone. One day they were in the field together, and the next, he was gone. Transferred? Discharged? She had no way to understand. All she knew was that she was taken to a kennel, locked away, and then one night, driven far from the city and dumped like trash. No tags, no crate, just tossed onto concrete. The days blurred after that. Nyla scavenged scraps, hiding, freezing, waiting. She growled at passers-by out of instinct, but no one came close. No one saw the dog beneath the dirt, the soldier inside the shell, until one night she stood and did what she had been trained to do. Jason Wells was just trying to survive, 38 years old, recently divorced, recently jobless, living out of a rusted pickup and taking odd jobs around town to afford food and gas. Life had hit him hard and fast after a construction accident left him with nerve damage in his right hand. And though the doctors said it wasn't permanent, the pain never really went away. That night, he was walking home from a late shift at a bar, cash under the table, the only kind of work he could get these days. His breath fogged in the icy air. He turned into the alley behind the warehouse to shave a few minutes off his walk. Then he heard it, a growl, low, deep, close. He stopped. From the shadows ahead, two yellow eyes stared back at him. He couldn't see the full body, just the outline, a large dog, still, watching. Jason froze. "Hey there," he said gently. "Easy, girl." The dog stepped forward, revealing herself under the streetlight. Jason's stomach twisted. She looked half dead. Matted fur, sunken sides, frost on her whiskers. But her posture was alert, ears up, tail stiff. Not a stray stance. This was trained behavior. "You're AK-9, he whispered. Nyla's ears flicked at the word. Then she lunged, not at him, at the figure behind him. Jason barely had time to react before a sharp cry cut through the alley. He spun around and saw a man, hood up, knife in hand, drop to the ground with a scream as the German Shepherd tore into his arm, disarming him with terrifying precision. The attacker bolted, bleeding and screaming, vanishing into the dark. Nyla stood over the drop knife, growling low. Jason was frozen, heart pounding. She had saved him from an attack he hadn't even known was coming. And now, she turned to face him, slowly, silently. Jason raised his hands, cautious. "You're not going to hurt me, are you?" Nyla just stared. Then she collapsed, right there in the snow. Jason rushed to her side. She was breathing, but barely. Her muscles twitched. Her paws bled. And her body shook with more than cold. It was exhaustion. Total collapse. "Hey," he said gently, kneeling. "You did good. You saved my life. But now I need to save yours." He didn't think. He just moved. He took off his jacket, wrapped it around her, lifted her slowly into his arms. She didn't fight it. She didn't have the strength. And just like that, the man who had lost everything carried home something that had been left for dead, something that was about to change his life in a way he never saw coming. Jason's truck was a mess. A cracked windshield, worn seat cushions, coffee-stained dash. It smelled like damp wool and old metal. But that night, it became a sanctuary. He had cleared the passenger seat in seconds, gently lowering Nyla onto a thick, folded blanket he usually used to sleep. Her body was limp, her breathing shallow. Her gums were pale. Jason cursed under his breath. He didn't know anything about dogs beyond the occasional stray that wandered near the construction sites back in the day, but he knew enough to see she was fading fast. As he pulled out of the alley, he made a quick decision. Not to the shelter, not the city pound. If she'd come from the police and they'd dump her like that, he wasn't about to hand her back. He drove straight to a small animal clinic on the edge of town. It wasn't 24/7, but he remembered seeing a light on in the back late at night once. He had nothing to lose by trying. He parked in a fire zone and ran to the door, pounding on the glass. A minute passed, then another. Finally, a woman in blue scrubs opened the door with a tired, irritated look, until she saw what Jason was holding in his arms. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Bring her in. Now." Dr. Lily Hart hadn't planned to be at the clinic that night. She'd stayed late doing inventory, the kind of mindless task that let her forget about the stress of student debt and the divorce papers waiting at home. She never expected to save a life that night. Jason stood back while Lily worked quickly, calling in her assistant, setting 4 lines, checking vitals. She moved with focus and command, but Jason could see the tight worry in her brow. "She's emaciated," Lily muttered, "dehydrated, bleeding from her paws. Looks like early-stage hypothermia. And the scar on her side, it's deep, surgical, maybe military or police trauma." "She saved my life," Jason said softly. "Some guy tried to mug me. She jumped out of the dark and went for him, took the knife from him." Lily's eyes darted up. "She's trained. She must be." "She's not a stray," Lily murmured. "She's a fighter." Jason nodded. "So don't let her go." "I won't." It took hours to stabilize her. Jason didn't leave. Not once. He paced. He sat. He drank bad coffee from the machine. Every time he looked at the back room where Nyla lay, something twisted in his chest, an emotion he hadn't felt in months. Purpose. He had lost his job, his wife, his dignity, and yet this broken dog, half her weight, half her strength, had risked her life to protect him. When the sun finally rose, Lily came out with a small smile. "She's resting. Still weak, but stable." Jason exhaled deeply. "Thank you." "I should be thanking you," Lily replied. "You brought her in. You saved her." He shook his head. "She saved me first." Jason named her Nyla 2 days later. It was a name he remembered from a documentary about war dogs, a name that meant champion in Arabic. She was quiet during those first days, barely moved. She had been given pain medication, fluids, soft food. She slept curled tight on a blanket in the corner of Jason's truck. He parked behind the clinic with Lily's permission and stayed there, running errands for staff during the day in exchange for space to stay nearby. He talked to Nyla every night, told her about his old job, the wife who left, the little apartment he used to rent, the accident, the pain that never went away. "You're the first one that's looked at me without pity," he said to her one night. Her ear twitched. "You're not giving up, are you?" he asked. She didn't respond. But the next morning, when he opened the truck door, she was sitting up and watching him. By the end of the week, Nyla was walking again, slowly, stiffly, but with intention. Jason bought her a second-hand harness from the thrift store and started taking her on short walks through a quiet park nearby. She stuck close to him, always alert, always scanning. People watched. Some stopped to admire her. Others kept their distance. But Jason noticed something strange. She would react to certain sounds, quick footsteps, men talking loudly or the distinct jingle of metal, and she'd flinch. She'd freeze. It wasn't just trauma. It was memory. She was used, Lily told him one afternoon, pushed beyond her limit. Dogs like her, they don't just forget what they were trained to do, but they do remember how they were discarded. Jason understood that more than he wanted to. He took her to a retired officer he knew, someone who had worked K-9 units before. The man confirmed it within minutes. She's a dropout, he said, trained for patrol or narcotics, maybe even tactical engagement. You can see it in her posture, her eyes. But someone pulled her early, maybe injured, maybe the handler transferred, and then she got dumped. Jason clenched his jaw. She saved my life. Then don't let her think she was born to be forgotten. That night, Jason made a decision. He used the last of his savings to rent a small room behind a garage downtown, a place with heat, a working sink, and enough space for Nyla to move around freely. They moved in the next day. He hung a sign on the garage's front. Handyman available, no job too small. Within a week, he had 3 calls. Within 2, 7. People started noticing the quiet man with the scar on his hand and the loyal German shepherd who never left his side. Jason's back still hurt. The nerves in his fingers still twitched when he held a hammer too long. But Nyla was always nearby, always watching, always ready. And slowly, they both began to heal. Together. But peace never lasts forever. One late afternoon, as Jason was repairing a gutter for a local diner, he saw a familiar shape down the road. A man in a hoodie, pacing, watching. Jason's blood went cold. It was him, the man from the alley, the one Nyla had attacked. He hadn't been caught. He hadn't forgotten. And now he was back, watching them, waiting. Jason's instinct screamed. But Nyla didn't need instincts. She had already seen him. Her posture changed. Her stance stiffened. Her ears pinned back. She remembered, too, and this time she wouldn't miss. Jason didn't blink. He didn't have to, because Nyla had already locked onto the man. Her golden brown eyes narrowed, her stance lowered, her chest pushed forward, silent, watchful, dangerous. The alley attacker didn't notice at first. He was too busy pretending not to watch them from across the street. But then Nyla let out a low, guttural growl. It was soft, almost like a whisper, yet unmistakably lethal. The man turned, and he froze. Even from a distance, Jason saw his expression shift from casual to cold panic. He recognized her. She recognized him. And in that split second, everything changed. The man turned and bolted around the corner. Jason's heart hammered. But Nyla didn't chase. Not yet. Stay, Jason whispered, gripping the leash, his palm already slick with sweat. Nyla obeyed. Jason quickly scanned the diner's rooftop. The ladder he'd been using leaned against the brick wall. He climbed down in seconds, his knees aching from the awkward angle. His toolbox clattered behind him. Nyla, heel! She moved aside immediately, her tail stiff like a rod. Her ears stayed locked in the direction the man had vanished. Jason's mind was racing. That man, he hadn't just come to watch. He had been scouting, and based on the way he ran, he hadn't expected to see the dog again, which meant he thought she was dead. And now his unfinished business had just come back to haunt him. Jason took Nyla home, double-locked the door, and checked the garage security cams twice. He hadn't used them in weeks. They were cheap and outdated, but they'd have to do. He rewound the footage. Sure enough, he spotted the man lurking by the dumpsters 2 hours before showing up near the diner. Slow pacing, watching, planning. I think he was following us, Jason muttered to Nyla, his voice low. She rested near the wall, eyes alert. He called the police. Not 911, just the local non-emergency line. An officer came out, listened to Jason's description, and nodded slowly. Tall guy, pale hoodie, scar on his cheek. Jason's chest tightened. That's him. He's been on our radar, the officer said. Suspected in 3 muggings and 1 break-in. We haven't caught him yet, but we've been close. If he's hanging around again, we'll step up patrol. Jason clenched his fists. I don't want him anywhere near here. I've got a working dog. She's K-9 trained. probably ex-police or military. The officer raised an eyebrow. That the one who took him down last time? Jason nodded. Then he probably won't make the same mistake twice. That night, Jason didn't sleep. Neither did Nyla. Every noise outside made her ears twitch. Every car passing by sent her to the window. She was on edge, but not nervous. She was ready. Jason moved a cot into the garage where she liked to rest. He lay beside her, blankets pulled tight, flashlight within reach. His nerves burned like hot wire under his skin. "You protected me once," he said softly. "I won't let you do it alone again." He drifted off somewhere near dawn and woke up to the sound of breaking glass. Jason leapt to his feet. Nyla was already up, her body stiff, eyes locked on the small side window near the back. Another crash, then silence. Jason grabbed the flashlight and the old steel bar he kept under the workbench. His heart pounded in his ears as he crept to the window. Shattered, glass everywhere. Footsteps outside. Then the door creaked. Jason turned slowly, lifting the bar. The door slammed open. A figure burst in, and Nyla launched. It happened in a blur. The man had a crowbar. He raised it, but Nyla was faster. She slammed into his side with full force, knocking him into the tool shelf. Metal crashed to the ground. He screamed, swinging wildly, but she ducked, bit hard into his forearm. Jason rushed forward and kicked the crowbar from the man's hand. Nyla growled, tightening her grip. Jason saw the man's eyes go wide with panic. "Call off your dog." Jason raised a flashlight, keeping it trained on the man's face. "Why are you here?" "Didn't know. She was still. You're both crazy," he spat. Nyla growled louder. "Call her off," he cried again. Jason didn't. "Not yet. You broke into my home. You stalked me. You left this dog to die. You tried to stab me in an alley," Jason said, voice steady. "I should let her finish what she started. Please." "Nyla," Jason said suddenly. She stopped, but she didn't let go. She stared up at Jason, waiting. He looked into the man's eyes and saw something new. Terror. "Nyla, release." She obeyed instantly. The man slumped to the floor, clutching his bleeding arm, gasping. Jason kicked the crowbar away and grabbed the zip ties from his bench drawer. He bound the man's wrist behind his back and shoved him onto his side. 10 minutes later, the police arrived. They took him in, and this time Jason pressed full charges. They had it all on camera, and for the first time since the alley, Jason felt safe. Later that day, Lily came by the garage. Jason told her everything. She looked at Nyla, who was sleeping peacefully again, her head on her paws, and shook her head in disbelief. "She didn't just protect you," Lily said. "She ended it." Jason nodded slowly. "She knew he was coming before I did. She trusted you enough to stay. That means something." He looked at the dog who had become more than just a pet, more than a friend. She was his shadow, his protector, his reason to get up in the morning. "She's not going anywhere," Jason said. "No," Lily replied. "She already chose you." Jason smiled faintly. "I think we chose each other." 2 weeks later, Jason stood on a small stage. The community recognition changed things. Not just for Nyla, but for Jason, too. The story had made the local papers. Headlines like, "Retired K9 saves owner twice," and "Hero dog stops repeat attacker" brought attention, sympathy, and something Jason hadn't felt in over a year, respect. People started waving to him on the street. Some stopped by the garage just to meet Nyla. Kids brought her treats. Veterans nodded in solemn understanding. It wasn't fame they earned. It was trust, and with that came opportunity. One morning, a man in uniform stepped into Jason's garage while he was installing a shelf for a neighbor. Jason Wells. "Yeah," Jason said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Can I help you?" The man extended a hand. "I'm Lieutenant Brooks. I run the K9 division for the county. I heard about what your dog did." Jason narrowed his eyes slightly. "She's not for sale." Brooks laughed. "I'm not here to take her. I'm here to offer you both something." He explained that the department had recently launched a new outreach program pairing retired service dogs with at-risk youth and military veterans suffering from PTSD. They needed trainers, people who could relate, people who had seen trauma, lost things, rebuilt lives. Someone like you, Brooke said. Jason looked at Nyla, who was lying by the door, ears perked. You want us to train others? I want you to show them what's possible. It started slowly. Once a week, Jason and Nyla drove out to the small training field behind the sheriff's department. There were no weapons, no pressure, just a fenced-in track, shaded bleachers, and a handful of humans who had seen too much of the world and didn't trust it anymore, much like Nyla once had. The first group was made up of 4 people: a retired Marine with prosthetic leg, a teenager recently released from juvenile detention, a firefighter who hadn't spoken since losing his partner in a blaze, and a young woman who wore sunglasses even indoors, her scars deeper than anyone could see. Jason didn't talk much that first session. He didn't need to. Nyla did the talking. He gave her simple commands, and she executed them with flawless grace. Sitting, tracking, stopping on a dime, responding to subtle hand signals, standing guard. But the moment that changed everything came at the end. Jason stepped aside, opened his arms, and said, "Nyla, go greet." She looked up at him, then trotted toward the semicircle of strangers. She stopped in front of each person, sat calmly, looked them in the eye, and then nudged their hand with her nose. Even the man who hadn't spoken in months whispered, "Good girl," under his breath. They were all smiling, and Jason realized something. She wasn't just teaching them control. She was showing them connection. The program grew quickly. Jason and Nyla became the heart of it. Every week brought new faces, new pain, new guarded hearts. And every week, Nyla cracked through one more. She let the woman with burns cry into her fur. She stood still as the boy from juvie apologized for once throwing a rock at a dog as a kid. She curled up at the firefighter's feet as he slowly began to talk again. Jason didn't consider himself a therapist. He didn't give lectures. He just showed up, quiet, steady, present. And somehow that was enough, because people weren't just watching Nyla heal. They were healing with her. Back at home, the bond between Jason and Nyla deepened in ways he couldn't put into words. She slept at the foot of his bed now, no longer needing to patrol the windows every hour. She trusted the safety of the space they had built. He cooked her chicken on the weekends. She sat beside him while he worked on furniture for local shops. Sometimes they drove out to the lake just to sit under the trees and breathe. He told her everything. About the accident that had ruined his hand. About the ex-wife who left when the money stopped and the guilt started. About the nights he thought of ending it all, and how the sound of her growl in that alley snapped him back to life. She listened the only way a dog can, with stillness, with patience, with presence. But not everyone was happy about Jason's growing role. At a town council meeting in early spring, a man stood up and questioned the legitimacy of the outreach program. "This is taxpayer-funded," he said. "Are we really letting a handyman with no formal education run canine therapy sessions? What happens when something goes wrong?" Jason was there, standing in the back, quietly holding Nyla's leash. He didn't react, but someone else did. Lily Hart. She stood up, voice calm but sharp. "I'm the veterinarian who saved Nyla's life, and I've watched Jason rebuild hers and his own. You want credentials? Fine. I have a degree in veterinary medicine and a license to practice in this state. And I say Nyla is one of the most emotionally intelligent dogs I've ever met. And Jason? He's done more to reach these people than any clipboard ever could." The room applauded. Jason's chest tightened. Not out of pride, out of humility. He wasn't used to being defended. Lily found him outside after the meeting. The streetlights cast soft shadows on her face. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "Yes, I did," she replied. "Because you're not just helping them. You're helping me, too." She reached down and scratched Nyla behind the ear. Turns out she wasn't the only one who needed rescuing. That night, Jason sat by the window, watching Nyla sleep, her chest rising and falling in rhythm. He whispered, "You were meant to do more than serve. You were meant to heal." She didn't wake, but her tail thumped softly against the floorboards. She knew, because deep down, dogs don't just love. They remember, they forgive, and sometimes they lead us home. By the time summer arrived, the garage had transformed. What was once a dusty repair shed had become a place of healing. The front wall bore a new sign, Second Leash K9 Healing Program. Below it hung a smaller one, founded by Jason Wells and Nyla. It wasn't just the veterans and teens who came now. It was parents with children who had social anxiety, officers recovering from trauma, people who'd lost everything and didn't know how to start again. Jason and Nyla greeted them all. But on a humid Friday afternoon in July, everything they had built was put to the ultimate test. Jason had just finished a quiet one-on-one with a teenage girl named Ellie. She was 15, barely spoke, and hadn't left her room for months after witnessing her father's death in a robbery. That morning, she had laughed, when Nyla rolled over mid-command and begged for belly rubs instead. It was the first real sound of joy Jason had heard from her. As Ellie left with her mother, Jason smiled, wiped sweat from his brow, and turned to clean up the mats. He didn't see the man watching from across the street, but Nyla did. She froze, ears up, back tense. Jason caught her posture from the corner of his eye and turned. The man wasn't just watching. He was waiting, and Jason recognized him instantly. Marcus Kane, a name that still stirred tension in town. The man had spent only 6 months in jail after Nyla had taken him down in the garage. Lack of evidence, technicalities, a good lawyer. The burglary charge stuck, but the assault didn't. And now he was out. Jason had known this moment would come, but not like this. Not with people inside. Not with Ellie and her mother only 20 yards down the street. Kane started walking toward the building. Jason stepped outside. "Don't come any closer." Kane smiled, hands in his pockets. "Relax. I'm just out for a walk." "You're not welcome here." "Funny," Kane said, glancing at the sign. "Looks like you're doing well for yourself. Hope that dog still got teeth." Behind Jason, Nyla stood at the threshold of the garage. She didn't bark. She didn't growl. She just watched. Jason stepped forward. "What do you want?" Kane shrugged. "Closure, I guess. You cost me 6 months. Thought I'd say hi. Turn around." Kane looked past Jason toward Nyla. "She yours now? You two playing therapy heroes. She saved lives. Something you wouldn't understand." Kane's eyes darkened. "You think you're safe because of a dog?" Jason didn't flinch. "I know I am." Kane's jaw clenched. He spit on the sidewalk, gave Jason one last glare, and walked away. But Jason knew it wasn't over. Nyla stood still, eyes tracking him until he disappeared. She hadn't moved for a long time. That night, Jason reinforced the locks. He also called Lily. She arrived with a first aid kit and a taser she admitted she never thought she'd actually use. "He came back?" she asked. Jason nodded. "He was baiting us, trying to scare me. He wanted to be seen. And now I wait." Lily shook her head. "You can't fight him alone." Jason glanced at Nyla. "I'm not." The next evening, around 2 a.m., it happened. The security cameras didn't catch him, but Nyla's ears did. A shuffle, a click, the soft whine of the rear door being tampered with. Jason sat up instantly. He didn't turn on the lights. He reached for his flashlight and the short aluminum baton he kept beside his bed. Nyla was already on her feet, her body humming with focus. Jason whispered, "Stay low." They crept through the garage, barefoot and silent. The glow of the moon came through the window, just enough to cast shadows on the wall. Then the back door creaked. Jason and Nyla froze. The silhouette of a man slipped inside, slow and quiet. Kane. He held something in his right hand, small, dark, and sharp. Jason couldn't see exactly what it was, but it glinted under the moonlight. Jason moved slightly. The floorboard creaked. Kane turned, and Nyla lunged. He tried to swing, but she was faster. She hit his side with full force, teeth clamping down on his wrist. Kane howled in pain and dropped the blade. Jason charged forward, grabbing the baton and slamming it against the floor just inches from Kane's face. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Move again," Jason growled, "and she won't stop." Kane tried to wriggle free, but Nyla held firm. Jason grabbed the zip ties and locked Kane's arm behind him. He turned on the lights. Kane's face was twisted in rage. "You think this is over?" he spat. "You think the dog's going to protect you forever?" Jason didn't answer. Instead, he called the police. This time, they didn't come quietly. And this time, they had everything: video, weapon, force entry, and the blood on Kane's arm from Nyla's bite. The officers didn't even ask questions. As they hauled Kane away, one turned to Jason. "She trained." Jason looked at Nyla and smiled. "Better. She remembers." It took days to process. Ellie's mom sent a thank you letter. The sheriff sent an invitation to speak at a state K-9 conference. The mayor came by with a gift basket. But Jason didn't care about the noise. He only cared that Nyla was okay. She had bruised her hip again in the takedown. Old wounds, soft tissue, nothing severe, but it slowed her down. She limped for a day or two. Jason sat beside her every moment. He massaged her leg, read to her from a dog behavior book, told her stories from his childhood. When she finally stood on her own and walked across the room without pain, he nearly cried. "You didn't just stop him," Jason whispered. "You ended it. For good this time." Autumn painted the streets of Fairgrove in rich reds and golds. Leaves drifted onto sidewalks where neighbors now stopped Jason to ask about Nyla's recovery. Everyone in town knew her name now. Kids waved at her from porches. Shopkeepers left treats at the garage door. But inside the small converted garage that had become something more than just a place of work, life had slowed in the best possible way. Nyla, now fully recovered from the confrontation with Kane, had earned the kind of peace most working dogs never got. She had a bed by the front window, 2 bowls with her name, a basket of toys she never used but refused to part with, and a routine filled with calm and care. Jason no longer worried she would bolt at night noises or pace the floor with restless trauma. She was home, and for the first time in years, so was he. The second leash program had grown beyond anything Jason imagined. After the state conference speech, which he delivered nervously, with Nyla sitting calmly at his feet, counties across the region began reaching out. Donations poured in. A local veteran foundation offered a grant to help expand a garage into a full-service healing center. Jason declined the flashy proposals and kept it small, honest, and local, because what he and Nyla had built wasn't just a program. It was a proof of hope, one soul at a time. He brought in others, too, people who had healed and wanted to help. Lily now led weekly emotional support sessions. The quiet firefighter, now speaking freely, volunteered to assist with dog care and maintenance. Ellie, the one silent teenager, came every weekend just to help brush the dogs. Jason watched it all unfold from the edge, quiet but deeply moved. He had started with nothing, less than nothing, and ended up creating something that couldn't be taken. And it all began with one abandoned dog in an alley. One cool evening, Jason and Lily sat out back on folding chairs, mugs of tea in hand, Nyla dozing between them. "You ever think about what would have happened if she hadn't found you?" Lily asked. Jason shook his head slowly. "I don't want to." "I do," she said, "because it makes all of this even more incredible." Jason looked out at the training yard, now decorated with pumpkins for the upcoming town fundraiser. "I thought I lost my purpose when the accident took my hand," he said, "and she thought she lost her place when they threw her away. But you found it in each other." He nodded. "She didn't save my life just once. She saved it every day after." They sat in silence a while. Then Lily said quietly, "Jason, You know she's getting older. He knew. The way Nyla's joints clicked after longer walks. The way she slept deeper now. The increasing whiteness around her muzzle. She's earned her rest, Jason said, petting her gently. But she's not done yet. She'll let you know when she is. Jason's throat tightened. Yeah. He glanced at Lily. You ever think about staying? She turned to him. I mean, you're already here every day. The dogs love you. Nyla loves you. She smiled. I'm not going anywhere. He smiled back. Good. Nyla stirred and stood up, tail thumping once, as if giving her silent blessing. The seasons continued to pass. Winter came and went. Jason started writing down the story, his and Nyla's, hoping someday someone else might read it and understand that even the most broken beginnings can lead to something whole. By spring, Nyla had officially retired from public sessions. She still walked the training field with pride, but she now spent more time curled up in sunbeams and teaching commands. The other dogs, newer and younger, followed her like students around a wise elder. She was the heart of the place, even in quiet. One afternoon, Jason found her standing in the doorway, just watching the trees move in the wind. He stood beside her. You thinking about the past? He asked. She looked up at him, then leaned against his leg. He knelt down. You're not going anywhere, he whispered. I promise. Months later, Nyla passed away peacefully in her sleep. She had walked slowly to her bed that evening, circled twice like she always did, and laid down. Jason found her the next morning, curled up like a comma, still calm, at peace. He didn't cry at first. He just sat beside her. He stroked her head, whispered thank yous, told her how proud he was. Then he wept, not because she was gone, but because she had finally laid down without fear. He buried her beneath the old oak tree in the training yard, the one where she had once shown a boy how to trust again. The community gathered, even